A neighborhood left reeling after a woman in her 60s was hit by a vehicle last night. The driver fleeing the scene. Police now on the hunt to find them. Good afternoon. We begin in North York, where a woman was killed in a hit and run last night. Police say she was riding an e-scooter when she was struck by the vehicle. CTV's Allison Hurst is live at the scene this hour with the latest. Allison.
Natalie, we spoke with the woman's husband. He was too distraught to do an interview with us, but he did share a number of stories about their lives together. The woman who was killed is Lillian Marlene Nagy. She would have been 65 on December 5th. She and her husband, John Moran, both worked for the Toronto School Board for 30 years and had retired recently. She was a caretaker and he was a carpenter. They also own an open-air home in the village of Malindi in Kenya, where they would help the kids in the village by bringing clothes, soccer balls, uniforms, and they've been doing that work for 20 years. What happened last night, Moran and Nagy were leaving a friend's house in the neighborhood on their e-scooters. Moran left to go to a store and pick up a few things, and she carried on home. At about 9 last night, Nagy was struck by a vehicle in the intersection of Goddard Street and Codsell Avenue. She was pronounced dead on scene, and the driver fled. Neighbors could be seen outside, visibly shaken, as police investigated the crash and searched for the driver.
So we saw a lot of police cars, and of course the fire department was here, ambulances were here. They closed the entire crossing and up to the other block. So we were a bit scared at first, but we saw that, you know, there was a lady, they said a lady who died from a hit and run. So it was horrible really to see, because she flew very far away from where she was hit. So definitely it was more than 40 or 50 kilometers, and this is a quiet neighborhood. You know, at least drive 20 to 30 kilometers per hour.
Her husband says that Nagy was not wearing a helmet at the time of the crash on her e-scooter. Police are looking for a small white sedan. They're asking anyone with information or video footage to contact them. Reporting live, I'm Allison Hurst. Nathan, back to you. Thank you, Allison. The SIU's invoked its mandate after a person arrested following a major crash on the 400 in Vaughan was injured. OPP say the crash happened in the northbound lanes at Bass Pro Mills around midnight. One driver fled the scene, but they were followed by one of the vehicles involved in the crash, who just happened to be an off-duty police officer. The suspect was arrested nearby shortly after. They were taken to hospital for injuries that are not to be believed to be life-threatening.
A three-vehicle collision, rear-end type crash. The suspect who fled was driving a green panel van, contractor-type vehicle, slammed into the back of another minivan, which also then contacted a third vehicle. That third vehicle was then driven from the scene here in the attempts to locate and take into custody the person who fled on foot.
The northbound 400 was closed for about 9 hours for the investigation, but has since reopened. And one person's in hospital after the ceiling of a driveway overhang collapsed this morning. It happened at the entrance to a North York apartment building. The scene is at 170 Chalk Farm Road. Toronto Fire says a car with 2 passengers was buried in the rubble. One of those people was taken to hospital. The front entrance to the building is closed. Here's more from the driver of the car.
The building collapsed on us.
The roof came down on your car?
Yeah, not just on our car. Part of the rubble fell on me. The lady in question, she had a dislocation on her waist and her ankle because she has been rushed by the ambulance to the hospital. I was just lucky enough because I was the one that actually pushed her, you know, for her to, if not, she would have died there. So myself, I was able to run out because I noticed it quite on time.
Toronto Fire says the city's building department has been notified.
The Province's Special Investigation Unit says a 40-year-old man is dead after an officer-involved shooting in Niagara Falls. This happened around 11:15 yesterday morning near a hotel at Stanley Avenue and Pier Street. The police watchdog says the incident involved a Toronto police officer serving with the Repeat Offender Parole Enforcement Unit. The officer is believed to have opened fire during an attempted arrest that resulted in some kind of interaction. The SIU says a Hamilton police officer was also seriously injured in the incident, and the investigation is ongoing. And in Durham Region, police have identified the suspect in a stabbing at Pickering GO Station early Monday. They say the victim was walking to their car when a man stabbed them, causing non-life-threatening injuries. Investigators now say they're looking for 30-year-old Corey Voskamp of no fixed address in connection with the case. They say he's known to ride the GO train between Oshawa and Oakville. They also say to call 911 if you spot him, and he's considered armed and dangerous.
Now to a major shift in Canada's foreign policy regarding the Middle East. Prime Minister Mark Carney says his government is preparing to recognize a Palestinian state.
The PM says the move is aimed at preserving the possibility of a two-state solution in the region as the Israel-Hamas war continues to devastate the Gaza Strip.
Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reforms, including commitments by the Palestinian Authority's President Abbas to fundamentally reform its governance, to hold general elections in 2026 in which Hamas can play no part, and to demilitarize the Palestinian state. Canada will increase its efforts in supporting strong democratic governance in Palestine and the contributions of its people to a more peaceful and hopeful future. Canada reiterates that Hamas must immediately release all hostages taken in the horrific terrorist attack of October 7th, that Hamas must disarm, and that Hamas must play no role in the future governance of Palestine.
The move from the PM follows similar pledges from the UK and France as aid organizations warn of looming famine in the Gaza Strip during the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Israel has argued recognizing a Palestinian state in the wake of Hamas's October 7th attacks would be rewarding the militant group. And CTV's Camille Karamali is following this story today and joins us now. Camille, Canada is going to recognize Palestinian statehood this fall, but reaction was quick and swift from Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's right. Donald Trump with this looming deadline related to increased tariffs just around the corner, August 1st. Now, President Donald Trump saying and reacting to Canada's major shift in rhetoric when it comes to the idea of a Palestinian state. Have a look at what he had to say, saying, wow, Canada has just announced that it is backing statehood for Palestine. That will make it very hard for us to make a trade deal with them. Israel also reacting, saying it rejects the statement by the Prime Minister of Canada, and the change in the position of the Canadian government at this time is a reward for Hamas. Here at home, though, it is also dividing parties. The Conservatives have come out against this declaration, saying that it is a renunciation of violence and destroys the path to a durable two-state solution. But the NDP coming out in favor of it, in fact, saying it should have not taken the Liberals this long to make this decision, and it should not take until September to implement it. Meanwhile, we also heard from Canadian diplomats before this announcement. More than 170 former Canadian diplomats held senior roles as ambassadors. They signed a letter calling the federal government to recognize a Palestinian state. Also heard from the National Council of Canadian Muslims, who said this is a historic day for Canada.
And this is a major but. The recognition does come with conditions.
Absolutely. And 14 other countries also signatories in this declaration, Nathan. And what we know is that these conditions are primarily around the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas saying that there will be a general election in 2026 and that Hamas can have no part in that election. And another major condition that was put forward, a commitment to the demilitarization of Palestine and the release of all Hamas hostages. About 20 hostages are still believed to be alive. Meanwhile, we know that more than 60,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since October 7th, a terrible death toll, as well as more than 100 dying from malnutrition. It appears, according to analysts, that the lack of aid getting into Gaza, a major turning point, Nathan, on why Canada is changing its rhetoric around a Palestinian state. Back over to you.
Thank you. CTV's Camille Karamali in the CTV National Newsroom. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Still to come this hour, the trade deadline is now just hours away. More on the latest threat from Donald Trump and the legal challenge to the U.S. president's sweeping tariff agenda just ahead. But first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. It was noticeably cooler out there this morning. Some relief after the scorcher of the last few days. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. Linz, wow, what a difference out there today.
Oh, big difference, Natalie. And I would normally say you could open the windows and take a breath of fresh air, but here's the problem. We are under a special air quality statement today here in the city of Toronto because of low-level smoke. The air quality has deteriorated thanks to drifting wildfire smoke. We do anticipate improvements as the afternoon goes on and into this evening, but currently we are at a 7 on the Air Quality Health Index. That is high risk, looking at moderate or low risk into tomorrow. Some of us had a little bit of rain this morning, but you'll notice that this system is mainly hugging the north shoreline of Lake Erie, so not a soaker as we were hoping for. Winds are coming out of the east right now, and temperature-wise, it is only 21 degrees, feeling like 23. 23 is our forecast daytime high, so that is a significant change from recent days and weeks. How long will the cool down last? We'll take you through the 7-day forecast, which includes your long weekend coming up. For now, Natalie, back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. The family of a Scarborough man who was killed in Costa Rica while on vacation says she was shot during a home invasion.
Now they're speaking out as they try to learn more about his death. CTV's Allison Hurst has the story. Christopher Deere had just arrived in Costa Rica with his girlfriend when he was killed a day later in what his family says was a violent attempted robbery at their vacation rental.
Just coming out of a room and somebody shoots you because they're trying to rob you, and for what?
His family tells CTV News the 40-year-old was shot on July 11th near the coastal town of Tamarindo. A member of the Costa Rica Organism of Judiciary Investigation says in an email they cannot provide further details because the case is under investigation. Global Affairs says it is aware of the death of a Canadian citizen in Tamarindo, Costa Rica. We express our sincere condolences to the family and friends. Consular officials are in contact with local authorities to gather more information. Deere's brother says in a statement, Chris was a seeker driven by an insatiable curiosity about the deeper questions of life. He was passionate about philosophy and applied his studies to nurturing his relationships with vast people from all walks of life that he was involved with. He adds, he was very close to his family and friends. He had a great sense of humor and a smile that would light up a room. We are all in shock that such a loving and generous soul lost his life in such a tragic and senseless way. Deere was a life coach who was able to work remotely and had plans to stay in Costa Rica for up to 6 months. He was also a blue belt in jiu-jitsu with aspirations to earn his black belt.
If he, still was with us, he would for sure get that rank. He had the strength and the determination to go there, and he told me one day I want to become a black belt. So that's why it was important.
Greg King was Deere's coach, and he honored him in a ceremony Tuesday, awarding him that black belt posthumously. His family and peers were there, and his medals and green kimono.
The green kimono is very particular. And I was like, it's like the army green. And we're like, why do you wear this? He's like, I don't know. I just like it. I was like, well, okay, if you like it, then good. We like it too. So everybody yesterday was laughing about that because it was like, oh, that's the kimono that everybody knew him to wear.
His family wants answers and justice, saying, we are hoping to have closure in this tragedy and waiting to see if the OIJ in Costa Rica is able to protect and bring justice to Canadians visiting Costa Rica. Cycling advocates are celebrating a victory as Ontario's Superior Court has struck down the Ford government's plan to remove bike lanes in the city.
The judge ruled that the province's plan was unconstitutional, dismissing the province's claims that removing the lanes would reduce congestion. The Ford government has already indicated that it will appeal the ruling. CTV's Scott Lightfoot has the details.
It is a legal decision that takes the air out of the Ford government's tires in its drive to remove bike lanes along some of Toronto's busiest streets. A Superior Court judge striking down the plan after a constitutional challenge by cycling advocates. Justice Paul Shabbos writing, the applicants have established that the removal of the target bike lanes will put people at increased risk of harm and death, which engages the right to life and security of the person. The evidence is clear that restoring a lane of motor vehicle traffic where it will involve the removal of the protected or separated nature of the target bike lanes will create greater risk to cyclists and to other users of the roads.
This wasn't about bike versus cars or even it's okay for drivers to be inconvenienced if it means cyclists are safer.
The executive director of CycleTO says they've always believed the province lacked the evidence to show that removing the bike lanes along Bloor, Yonge and University would speed up the flow of traffic and not jeopardize people's safety.
Ripping out these bike lanes will put people's lives at risk, and the province knows this, but it also won't address the traffic issues they're looking to solve, and they also know that.
Lawyer and cycling advocate David Shelnut agrees.
People are getting the wrong idea is that the decision is that cyclists have an entitlement to bike lanes under the charter, and that's not what the judge was saying. The judge said that the premier was proposing a law that was suggested would reduce congestion and commute times, and the evidence didn't show that.
Those who support realigning Toronto's bike lanes off of major streets are frustrated by the decision.
We're not against cyclists. We're against illogical bike lane placement, and this is ridiculous.
The Minister of Transportation releasing a statement that said, "We were elected by the people of Ontario with a clear mandate to restore lanes of traffic and get drivers moving by moving bike lanes off of major roads to secondary roads. To deliver on that mandate, we will be appealing the court's decision." The lanes will remain for now, pending the outcome of that appeal. Some cyclists hoping the province may reconsider its approach in favor of another solution.
There's got to be a balance between the two. Is it removing the bike lanes for half the year, or I don't have the answer, but there's got to be some balance struck. But removing it from the busiest street in Toronto is just like, come on, let's talk honestly. It's not practical.
Toronto is such a bikeable city. Vehicles are kind of impractical getting around, so if anything, people should feel encouraged to use these lanes that are here for their convenience.
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
A judge in Quebec has delayed his decision on whether to grant bail to 3 men facing terrorism charges. This is in connection to an alleged plot revealed earlier this month in which 3 men in their 20s are accused of planning to forcibly seize land in the Quebec City area. They face a range of charges, including facilitating a terrorist activity. A judge was expected to rule today on whether to grant them bail, but he has now told lawyers that he needs more time. A 4th accused faces weapons charges. The Canadian Armed Forces confirms that 2 of the men were members of the military at the time of their arrests on July 8th.
The city of Thompson, Manitoba is set to vote on extending a state of local emergency for another 30 days as a trio of wildfires threatens the community.
It's really been unsettling that this is really actually happening to us.
The closest fires are burning about 14 kilometers northeast of the city. Fire breaks are going up in the north end of the city, and sprinklers are being set up in some areas. Crews from Quebec have been helping put out hotspots. This comes as evacuees from other communities across Western Canada wait to see when they can return home.
The police came and said, you've got 5 minutes. So I was already ready to go.
The Drought Hill wildfire, which is believed to have been caused by a truck fire, was discovered yesterday near Peachland, British Columbia, and quickly grew to 27 hectares. The Central Okanagan Regional District issued evacuation orders for about 400 properties. Another 225 properties have been placed on evacuation alert, and residents have been told to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. Trade talks with the U.S. are coming down to the wire, with President Trump's August 1st deadline less than a day away.
On both sides of the border, the question remains, can a deal be reached in time to avoid a new wave of tariffs? Prime Minister Mark Carney indicated yesterday that negotiations with the United States might not conclude by the deadline set out by the president, although federal officials are actively involved in talks with their U.S. counterparts. Trump sent a letter to Carney threatening to impose 35% tariffs if Canada doesn't make a trade deal by Friday. The White House has said those duties would not apply to goods compliant with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade, better known as CUSMA. CTV's Jeremy Charon was following this story today for us from Ottawa. Jeremy, break down this latest tariff announcement from President Trump for us.
Yeah, Natalie, the latest announcement from Trump, the tariffs on copper are, impactful for the global copper industry. But in Canada, the copper industry is breathing a bit of a sigh of relief. It was expected that these tariffs would be more widespread, impacting almost all copper products, but that has not been the case. We've seen this 50% tariff be imposed on, a much smaller range of products, specifically semi-finished copper, things like rods, sheets, pipes, wiring. It does not apply to more kind of raw materials, semi-processed, semi-finished, or semi-refined materials like cathodes, anodes, concentrates. Those are the kinds of products that are produced a lot more here in Canada. And so, this is a good thing for the Canadian copper industry because it means that, most of the products that are manufactured and produced here in Canada will not be impacted by this latest round of copper tariffs. But of course, the big question mark that remains is the August 1st deadline and those new tariffs that you just touched on that are coming into effect as of tomorrow, and Canada and the U.S. still have not signed a deal. So that is the big kind of looming question mark that remains.
And are there any indications at this point of what might happen in the next few hours, whether we might in fact hit that August 1st deadline?
That is the big question right now. Everybody's watching closely. Everyone is trying to, tap into their contacts and determine whether or not Canada is going to be able to either land a deal or land an extension. Because as we've learned in the last few hours here, Mexico has signed an extension with the U.S. Donald Trump and Sheinbaum in Mexico have agreed to a 90-day extension to continue negotiations. So they haven't reached a deal yet, but they're not going to see the increase. Mexico isn't on tariffs as of tomorrow. They're going to extend the negotiation period by 90 days. The big question now is whether or not Canada can land that same extension. Not just a deal, but whether they can extend the negotiation timeline. Because when you look at the reasons that are being used for the extension with Mexico, Canada shares a lot of similarities with the U.S. They share a border with Mexico, rather. They share a border with the U.S. A lot of the same issues have been driving tariff and trade negotiations between the U.S. and Mexico and the U.S. and Canada. And so the question now is whether or not Canada can maybe secure an extension as well and push back the increase of those tariffs by perhaps 90 days.
Okay, thank you as always for your insight on this. CTV's Jeremy Charles in Ottawa.
Anytime.
As economists watch for the impact of trade tensions and tariffs, the U.S. Federal Reserve held interest rates steady in its latest decision. The U.S. Central Bank opted to leave its short-term interest rate unchanged for the 5th time this year. The rate will stay at about 4.3%. 2 Federal Reserve governors dissented in favor of a cut, but 9 officials, including Powell, favored holding the line. Powell says no decision has been made on whether to cut rates in September, even as the U.S. president accuses him of acting too late. Powell once again defended the Fed's independence.
It gives you is the ability to make these very challenging decisions that in ways that are focused on the data and the evolving outlook, the balance of risks and all the things we talk about, and not political factors. And so governments all over the advanced economy world have chosen to put a little bit of distance between direct political control of those decisions and the decision makers.
On this side of the border, the Bank of Canada also opted to hold its benchmark interest rate where it was at 2.75%.
Stats Canada says the economy contracted for a second straight month in May, but there were some signs of a rebound in June. GDP fell 0.1% in May, matching the decline in April. Goods-producing sectors were blamed for the decline, mainly in mining, oil, and gas. Manufacturing activity grew 0.7% in May, offsetting a drop of 1.8% in April, when the U.S. tariffs took full effect. Stats Can says its early estimates show June GDP growing 0.1% thanks to strength in retail and wholesale trade, but manufacturing is expected to decline again. Well, Summer McIntosh has won a 3rd gold medal at the World Aquatic Championships in Singapore.
The Toronto native was just a fraction of a second away from setting a new world record.
Will it be a world record? Perhaps not now, but it's going to be gold medal number 3. It's going to be close. McIntosh takes it out in a championship record. Another gold to her. Silver
The 18-year-old phenom easily captured the gold in the 200-meter butterfly event and has 2 more competitions as she tries to match a medal record by American Michael Phelps. CTV's John Rao has the story.
Well, Summer McIntosh does it again, winning that 3rd gold medal and almost getting a world record, off by 0.2 of a second. She was visibly frustrated by that, but a golden moment nonetheless, and her quest for 5 gold medals at the World Aquatics Championships continues. Here's what the 18-year-old had to say about her swim.
To see that I missed it by that little, and I know that I messed up the last about 15 meters of my race. I mean, overall, really happy with the time of the PB, but I didn't reach my goal tonight. But happy with the gold, happy with the win, and just gonna keep pushing forward.
And we were here this morning at the Toronto Pan Am Sports Centre with some of the young swimmers who gathered around an iPad to watch the race live. So many of them said they were in awe of McIntosh and inspired by what she's doing, attempting to match the record set by the legendary Michael Phelps, who's the only person to have won 5 individual gold medals at a world championship.
It's like crazy. She's like a literal machine. Pretty cool.
Based off of watching Summer and her reaction, I think she was frustrated that she was so close to the world record and didn't get it. But she just has that like hungry spirit, and it just motivates everyone around her.
She's bringing attention to everyone in Canada about the sport of swimming. That doesn't happen very often. And the people that are involved in the sport of swimming are like all in watching her and rooting for her.
Now McIntosh, who's of course from Toronto, will next go for gold on Saturday in the 800-meter freestyle. That is a highly anticipated race because she'll go up against Katie Ledecky, who is the current world record holder in that event. And then on Sundays, she'll try again for gold in the 400-meter individual medley, an event she is favored to win. John Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Well, even though it is a little cooler out there today, it's still a good afternoon to maybe find a pool and cool off. Here's a look at your highs. Now, yes, most of July we've been talking about daytime highs about 10 degrees warmer than this, so it is a change at 23 degrees. We are actually below seasonal. 27 is the average temperature this time of year. Yesterday, we made it to 29.9. The weekend is looking comfortable and filled with sunshine. This is great news for those who are planning to take part in the Caribbean Carnival. There's your weekend forecast. Whether you're spending it close to home or maybe heading to cottage country, we'll take a look at what you can expect in the coming days. Not a lot of rain over the next 7. Details after this.
When you see it happen, send it to CTV News. Text 10400 from your screen to ours. Text 10400.
All right, let's talk about the forecast. And I guess you can say a bit of a break from the extreme heat. It was noticeably cooler this morning.
Oh, yeah. The kids went out in the backyard and they said, it's so cool out. Is this the end of summer?
Oh, no.
No, not yet.
Well, it is the end of July, which can feel like the end of summer for those who are counting down to perhaps back to school. But don't worry, we still have another full month to enjoy of this summer season, and even beyond that if you're referring to the calendar appropriately. Here's the thing, though. It is cooler today. It's cloudier, and we've got some wildfire haze out there. So a big change in a couple of ways, but further changes coming into tomorrow. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. You can see the difference when it comes to, well, looking up in the sky over our city today. Yeah, hard to make out even where that CTV News chopper is flying because it is so hazy. Air pollution levels elevated for today in a big way. We are still at 7 on the Air Quality Health Index, which is considered high risk. So if you find yourself suffering a little bit, your eyes, your throat being impacted, this could be why. Pollution levels at an 8 on the Air Quality Health Index as well in the Peterborough area. So this is thanks to drifting wildfire smoke from Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Northern Ontario, and even parts of the U.S. Just the positioning of the jet stream is allowing more of that smoke to funnel into the lower Great Lakes. We're going to improve a little bit later on today and for tomorrow, but depending on where you're spending your long weekend, you might see a little bit of smoke or haze return, especially areas north of the city. It's 21 degrees right now in Toronto, and really what you see is what you get. Humidity is low. What a difference compared to not just yesterday, but most days this month. Evening patio forecast, it's going to be comfortable. Once the sun sets, you might consider maybe a light sweater or jacket. Temperatures in the low 20s, and then look at that overnight low, 14 degrees. So suddenly we're a little cooler than normal, and single-digit territory in places like Bancroft. 8 for the low tonight. We rebound a little bit for tomorrow. This is lovely, comfortable, 24 degrees, mainly sunny skies for your Friday. It's going to be a great kickoff to the long weekend, and then things will heat up as we make our way through Saturday and especially into Sunday. All right, we did have a little bit of wet weather through the overnight hours last night between about midnight and 5 a.m., but you'll notice this has mainly stuck to the south. If you're joining us from parts of Niagara region, you're still getting some wet weather. There goes the low. This will be away from us by the time we reach the evening hours tonight, and then it is high pressure for the next couple of days here. So we'll pause this for your Friday. Saturday, very similar, mainly sunny skies, and then it looks like Sunday, yeah, much of the same. In fact, check out this 7-day forecast. A real run of sun, especially as we make our way into tomorrow, right through the long weekend. Temperatures back near 30 degrees for both Sunday and Monday, but the humidity will still be low, so that's the big difference. Another thing you might notice here, this is a very dry 7-day forecast. That's the weather for now. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. The Toronto Blue Jays are back atop the American League East, and to mark the occasion, Toronto-based artist Birdo and the Yorkville Murals Festival are bringing the team's iconic symbol of the Blue Jay to life on the rooftop of a parkade in Yorkville. And that's where we find our Jessica Smith. Birdo seems like the perfect name for a Blue Jay fan.
It really is, Nathan, and it's hard to kind of grasp the scale of this piece, but I want to start by talking to Birdo. Now, you're an iconic artist here in the city, but you've worked around the world. It's a big deal that he's here. Talk to me about the piece behind us, because this is, you said, we were talking before we came on camera, the largest piece you've ever done. Why Toronto? Why the Blue Jay?
Yes, my piece de resistance, for sure. I'm a proud Torontonian, and so anytime I can, you know, work at home, paint at home, I love it, and I've been embraced by the city for so long, so it's a blessing. So I don't know, it felt groovy to do the unofficial mascot. We got the Blue Jay, the biggest Blue Jay, dare I say, on Earth.
We're going to put it out there. And this is all leading up to the Yorkville Murals Festival. Alan, I want to bring you back in. We've spoken before, but I want to talk about this particular collaboration, because obviously Birdo is a huge deal in the art world. You know the city so well. How did this all come about?
I've had a friendship with Birdo that spanned many years, and we just put our minds together to try to create something that is very meaningful, very impactful. This is a space where Yorkville Murals is going to host its famous block party, so what better way to celebrate it than to having a giant 26,000 square feet Blue Jay.
Obviously, the Jays are doing really well. You're a Jays fan. I'm a Jays fan. I think a lot of people at home are a Jays fan. We can all celebrate. You know, how did this all kind of come to your mind as far as the concept and then executing it? Because this is a massive piece.
Yeah, as my dear friend Alan said, like, we usually start by just challenging ourselves. So that we definitely did. And, you know, I think that's the fun part, is like, okay, let's push the limits and then let's see where we can take this. So it seemed to fit, the artwork seemed to fit the space, and well, I'm committed now. We're halfway through, so I gotta, yeah, I'll see it through, I promise.
So, you know, we're getting ready for the Yorkville Murals Festival, but when you think about a piece like this that's so public, it will be eventually driven on. Does that kind of break your heart a little bit, knowing that this is going to kind of maybe change in a certain way, or is that kind of the whole idea behind it, that this is a functional space and functional art?
It's a functional space and it's functional art, and it's going to be really beautiful to have, you know, over 2,000 people at the block party celebrating art on top of this beautiful piece. And to your point, it's a parking lot. It's going to have a lifespan after the party, but I think it's just part of the process.
Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to have more later on. I'm going to send things back inside.
Thank you, Jess. And speaking of the Blue Jays, the Jays have the day off, but not the front office team. They're working today on the trade deadline. Now, the club made a big splash in the market, adding some big-time pitching help. The Jays have acquired starter Shane Bieber from the Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians will reportedly receive pitching prospect Cal Stephen in the deal. MLB Pipeline lists Steven as the Jays' #5 pitching prospect. Bieber, meanwhile, has yet to pitch this season after recovering from elbow surgery a year ago. The 30-year-old won a Cy Young during the 2020 pandemic-shortened season.
Especially up and close to him. Lucas hits one to deep right field. A 3-run homer.
The Jays wrapped up a 14 games and 13-day stretch yesterday with a 9-8 win over Baltimore. The team went 9-5 in the busy stretch. We'll see if more trades happen before tonight's 6 p.m. deadline. The Jays are back in action tomorrow, hosting Kansas City.
Eugenie Bouchard played her final match at the National Bank Open in Montreal.
That's wide. And that is the end of Eugenie Bouchard's career. Everyone stands up.
Bouchard lost a 3-set thriller in Montreal before the event. She said this would be her last, and she would be ending her professional career in front of her home fans.
Coming up, a new cancer-killing drug offers promise for patients suffering from plasma problems. We'll have more on the treatment just approved in Canada. Health Canada has approved a new drug to treat multiple myeloma.
It takes a novel approach in attacking the cancer and offers more options for patients. We get the details from CTV's health reporter, Pauline Chan.
When Mary Antoine was admitted to hospital during the pandemic with severe back pain, she was quickly tested for multiple myeloma. But she says some patients can go years without a correct diagnosis, so she credits Myeloma Canada with increasing awareness.
Information for doctors that when patients present themselves with back pain, long-term back pain, that to check this for a protein in the blood that could be an indicator.
It's solely adults that are affected by myeloma, not children. And it does tend to be older adults.
Multiple myeloma is a cancer of the plasma cells. Marianne underwent an autologous stem cell transplant in 2021, but that doesn't get rid of 100% of the cancer.
It's like you have a big field of dandelions. And what the treatment does, it takes the field and it gives a weeding of all the dandelions. But there's still a few.
That's why new medications like Blenrep are so important.
So the drug both activates the patient's immune system against the cancer cell, also delivers the drug that helps kill this particular malignant cell. So it's a relatively novel mechanism in multiple myeloma.
Health Canada has just approved its use in combination with one of 2 other drugs. There are currently several thousand patients living with multiple myeloma in Canada, but with new drugs to improve survival, the hope is that number will grow. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Toronto's Renoviction bylaws take effect today. The new rules aim to protect tenants from bad faith evictions at the municipal level. Landlords will have to apply for a license within a week of giving a tenant an eviction notice based on planned renovations. They'll also have to compensate tenants for moving and other costly accommodations. That means a one-time allowance of $1,500 for a studio or one-bedroom apartment or $2,500 for a 2 or more bedroom unit. Landlords who don't follow the bylaw could be charged up to $100,000.
Still to come this hour, while Canada Post continues to negotiate with employees in hopes of reaching a deal, some Canadians say mail has been lost in the system. The details after the break. 55,000 Canada Post workers have until tomorrow to vote on the Crown Corporation's most recent and so-called final offer.
The negotiations come at a time when some Canadians and businesses have expressed frustration with some of Canada's Post services. CTV's Pat Foran has this consumer alert.
Ethan Thorogood of Toronto has volunteered to help children's causes in Africa. He decided to go to Kenya and Ghana for 3 months this summer to continue his humanitarian work. In the spring, he used Express Post to mail his passport, proof of vaccines, and other documents to the Ghana consulate in the GTA.
I checked back a few days later to see where it was at, being delivered to the consulate, and it was lost and nowhere to be found.
Once the documents were officially declared lost, Thorogood had to scramble to replace all the missing paperwork at an additional cost to him of $750.
Cost a lot financially and certainly emotionally as well.
He was able to get new paperwork in time to make the trip. Canada Post gave him $100, the maximum insurance for Express Post. His mother, Lara, felt he deserved much more.
He's going to volunteer, and that $750 would come in very, very handy, either towards his flight or helping the kids while he's there.
A Canada Post spokesperson told CTV News, "We apologize to the customer and recognize the importance of meeting the expectations of Canadians across the country."
This is actually the registered mail tag.
Sarah Isaacs of Mississauga had to mail confidential documents in February for a family member. They were medical records for her insurance company.
Because it's confidential medical information, I said I'm going to send it through Canada Post as a registered letter.
Isaacs kept checking to see when her registered letter would arrive. More than 5 months later, Canada Post still has no idea where it went.
They lost my letter. And now they're basically saying they refuse to do anything about it.
Canada Post told CTV News, "This is an unfortunate situation and we apologize to the customer that their registered letter still has not been delivered." Canada Post says it takes it very seriously whenever a letter, package or parcel goes missing. Isaacs is frustrated her family's private documents have disappeared.
You can't lose registered mail. That's absolutely insane.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
Microsoft's become the second publicly traded company to surpass a major milestone on the markets. The tech giant had a blockbuster earnings report citing booming sales of its cloud computing business. It also outlined plans for a record $30 billion U.S. in capital spending for its first fiscal quarter. Traders were enthusiastic about those results, and shares of Microsoft surged 6.6% in morning trading. And that was enough to get the company's market valuation above $4 trillion U.S., at least temporarily. Chipmaker NVIDIA reached that level earlier this month. More news after the break. Stay with us. A long and successful musical career can be difficult to attain, but that is just what Divine Brown has been able to achieve.
CTV's Andrea Kay sat down with Brown, who is now back on the Toronto stage in the musical Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812.
You are such a lovely thing, oh, where have you been? It's such a shame to bury pearls in the country.
Divine Brown is back on stage in the Tony Award-winning play Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812. The musical is taken from just one chapter of Tolstoy's epic War and Peace, a melodrama set in Russia during the Napoleonic Wars. Brown was first cast as Helene in 2019. Then the COVID-19 pandemic struck. She thought the opportunity had passed. Then the pandemic came to an end.
Then I got a call from Chris Abraham from Prose. Musical Stage and Crows decided they were going to do a partnership on this one, and he said the role is still there for you if you want it.
You are such a lovely thing, oh, where have you been?
That was 2023, co-produced by Crows Theatre and the Musical Stage Company, so popular it was extended time and time again.
It was amazing. I really had, it was out of my mind. I didn't think it was going to be a thing, because I was just thinking about other things at that moment. So it was really exciting. I didn't know what I was in for.
Brown has had a long career with music, from R&B hits on the radio to a Juno Award win.
Still miss that old school love.
But her 5-octave vocal range has not been solely on record. She effortlessly moves from the studio to the stage. This was her show-stopping number in the musical Rent 25 years ago.
It's great to be back. I think it's great to be back. It just brought me back to, like, you know, a quarter of a century ago, and being like, oh wow.
Because of her history with this opera, she says this time around her performance is more relaxed.
It's bittersweet, because we know that we have a 6-week run, and we've got to make each show matter. Even when we come in and we're tired and we're talking about, ooh, because I'm saying my feet are barking by the end of the week, every week. But I do what I have to do I get that like nice foot massage before the Sunday matinee so that I can give my 110%.
Natasha Pierre and the Comet of 1812 is on stage at the Royal Alexandra Theatre until August 24th. Andrea Case, CTV News.
Wow, and Nathan, you just saw the show the other day.
Yeah, it's a fantastic show, and I was lucky enough to meet Divine Brown before the show. And she says, not just singing, it's acting, it's dancing, it's a lot of work, and she pulled it off. It's just a great show. I highly recommend it.
Okay.
The talent.
Yes, it looks spectacular. Thanks so much. Yeah, let's talk about the weather. I think it's also looking pretty good, depending on where you're joining us from, although it is worth mentioning that it is still smoky out there right now. We are almost finished with July. Here's your month in review. We know it's been a hot month. I find it interesting that we've actually had above average rainfall, considering it feels very dry out there and will be for the next little while here. 14 for the low tonight. 24 is our forecast high for tomorrow. That's very pleasant. Lots of sunshine. Do want to mention that if you're spending your weekend in cottage country, that you're likely to see maybe a little more in the way of smoke and haze in that part of Ontario compared to around the GTA. But here's your 7-day forecast. It's looking dry, which is good for your plans, not so good for your plants. Nathan and Natalie.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us here at CTV News, thank you for watching. I'm Natalie Johnson.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great day.